Okay, we're going to call this meeting of the IED Board together here at approximately 1:17 p.m. Would you please stand and join us as Director Norma Galindo leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Place your hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Norma.
Thank you.
Vance, Mr. Taylor, do we have any things to report out of closed? Any action taken?
Yes, Mr. President. In connection with item E, conference with legal counsel regarding potential litigation, El Centro Unit 3, the board authorized staff to enter into a settlement agreement with Siemens Energy, Inc., and I'm going to try to have copies of that on the back table for the public consumption for the end of the meeting.
That's everything, Mr. Taylor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Board, if you'd please come down to the front of the room and join me as we do some presentations, some service awards, as well as some ceremonial presentations.
For the service awards, they all read the same, except with the name and years of service. And they read Imperial Irrigation District Service Award, the Certificate of Recognition and Service Pin Replica of the District Emblem are presented to, and this one's presented to Jose Antonio Ferrell for 10 years of loyal and faithful service to the Imperial Irrigation District. For 20 years of service, Jose Sanchez, Relay Tech Journeyman in the Energy Department. For 20 years of service, Alvin Vinson, Control Operator Journeyman in the Energy Department.
I want you to come up and join us for the photograph.
For 25 years of service, Mary Lou Gallegos, Planner, Scheduler, General Services Department. For 35 years of service, Randall Gray, Right-of-Way Agent 2, General Services Department.
Thank you, sir.
And for 40 years of service, Richard Foy, Superintendent Construction Management in the Water Department. Is there anyone else here on the list that I did not call your name and you were here to receive a service award? Okay, that ends our service awards. United Way.
Other board members? That it? Yeah, no, we've got 2 more presentations. We have a ceremonial check to Cardenas Markets for energy conservation projects. Cardenas Markets here today?
Good afternoon, President Desert, members of the board. Today we're proud to recognize Cardenas Market with a check for the amount of $120,735.44 for their commitment to energy efficiency. Although they're headquartered in Southern California, they completed 3 major energy efficiency programs or projects within our service territory, specifically at the Coachella, El Centro, and Indio stores. In 2012, through the assistance of the IID's Custom Energy Solutions program, Cardenas retrofitted existing refrigeration motors with variable frequency drive controls, and they also upgraded existing motors to electronically commutated motors at both the Indios and El Centro stores. Prior to that, they also completed a refrigeration and lighting measures at their Coachella facility. So the projects that they implemented saved $862,000 kilowatt hours, as well as an additional 477,000 kilowatt hours at the Coachella plant, or store. So,
Thanks, everyone. You have congratulations.
and here with us today is Executive or Public Affairs Director Marco Robles.
Margo's going to come speak.
He would like to say a few words on behalf of the.
Yes.
Here, I'll take that for you so we can give that to him. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having us here. It is, in fact, a pleasure to receive such recognition. On behalf of the Cardenas family, I'd like to thank you. We have taken some very aggressive measures throughout our stores. We are now at Store 31 in Southern California and 3 in Las Vegas, Nevada. Some places are hotter and colder than others, and needless to say, the variables differ, yet Cardenas has taken not only a step in the right direction by being community-minded, but also being aggressive and responsive to the community needs, and this is just a reflection of what we do. Thank you so much for highlighting and recognizing what we've done. Thank you.
Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Marion Champion. I'm here representing the IID employees who have graciously given to the United Way of Imperial County. With us today, we have Ken Wheatons from the United Way. For the past several years, IID employees have increased their donations to the United Way. This year, with the help of our employee volunteers, we managed to increase those donations from approximately $78,000 up to close to $92,000. So with that, it gives me great pleasure to give Ken Wheaton this novelty check in the total of $91,907. And if I may, can I ask all the volunteers to come up for a quick photo?
We have a couple of members of our board.
No bunny ears, you guys.
It's hard to smile when you listen to tonight, ain't it? Hurting my back.
And Ken would like to say a few words quite quickly. Ken would like to say a couple quick words. And I'm sorry I mispronounced Whitens. I apologize.
Well, thank you, Marion. I'd like to thank the board for inviting us here today, the board of directors of the Imperial Irrigation District, but especially I'd like to thank the employees of the IID. This was unprecedented, I believe, and Melissa called me a couple of weeks ago with the results, and even though I'm a little bit overweight, I was walking on air for about the rest of that day. That was the best news I'd heard in a long time, and you guys are very important to us, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. You did a great job, and so I think we need to give a good round of applause to the employees of the IID. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move into the approval of our agenda. Any items of concern with the board members or items that need to be pulled?
Were you going to pull 15 and 21?
That's correct. Items 15, update by Chief Financial Officer on fund accounting efforts under information. And item 21, acknowledge receipt of energy cost adjustment reports for December 2012 will both be pulled today. The presenters are not available at work today. They're ill. So we'll make up for that at our next meeting. Any other items, directors?
Make a motion to approve.
So we have a motion from Director Hanks to approve as the agenda as amended. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Director Benson. Call for the question. The agenda is approved, 5-0. Next, we'll move into public comments. We've limited public comments to 3 minutes per speaker. Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose M. Lopez. I'm with Campesinos Unidos in Brawley, but we serve the county-wide. I'm here to thank you for giving us an opportunity to work with you on the weatherization program. We're being recommended for funding, and I know it's the next time agenda, but thank you. We are your customers are our customers. For instance, you know, with business partners, we spend out of Campesinos Unidos money about $100,000 in helping those people that are behind on their utility payments. So we're partners in that respect, and we're not. We need to work on that one a little bit more because we can stretch those $100,000 into a little bit more of customers. And I'm glad that the IID has opened up the opportunity to share the responsibility of services. I'm talking about on the weatherization program locally. We're local and location, as business partners say. And business is business, but business is done with people, remember. And I know the new board, I want to congratulate the new board for doing that and open up a little bit more. Thank you, gracias. And please keep your vision of customer service friendly. It's needed, and gracias again.
Thank you.
Opportunity to speak and take up the responsibility of the services. Gracias. Bye.
Thank you. Mr. Rollins.
Mr. President, if I could, I'd like to reserve my comments for when you consider item 16. Would that be all right? Just prior to that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amanda Brook, the superintendent from McCabe. And so this one goes first, if you'll send that one. The first pictures that are coming are from the check that we get at the, I think it's the beginning of the year. We use it for our garden. McCabe gets about $3,000. And we use it for our garden. We wanted you to see pictures of what that does. And then if you'll send this one. The next one are from your LEAP program, which is an energy saving program. And so we have some pictures of that. We've done some changing out of light fixtures. We've put in some G meters that hopefully will tell us how much energy we're saving from all of the changes that we've made. And I'm really just here to say thank you and how much we appreciate all that you guys have done. And we appreciate the programs. We are a huge seller of C's candy, so we have a couple of boxes here that you can share when you get time for a snack. And so it's really just to say thank you. It means a lot to the schools at this time. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Mrs. Brooks.
Would you ask legal counsel to pass that up this
Yes,
way?
if they would please. And I have, and I apologize, I have Mrs. Tagg here. She's a board member at McCabe. And so thank you so much for all that you do. We appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further public comments from the audience? Not seeing any, we'll move into board members' comments. We'll start today with Director Kuhn.
Thank you, Mr. Dedrick. We hear so much negative stuff about the district over and over and over. And today, for what it's worth, I want to thank the board. 2 weeks ago, I received a flu shot on Monday and went in a full-blown allergic reaction Tuesday. I just couldn't make it. But I do want to thank the board. Before the election, I knew about this $400 reconnect fee for those who were unfortunate enough to have their power turned off, and where they had to pay their full bill and then pay $400 to reconnect. And I just thought it was just kind of wrong, especially where we live, and typically you don't get your power turned off if you're rolling in dough. And so if you had to pay it, then I understand a small reconnection, but I could never understand paying your bill and have a $400 on top of that. It just seemed excessive. And the board was kind enough, in my absence, to pass that on a 4-0 vote. And I really want to say thank you to each and every one of you for doing that. It means a lot to those who are the most affected by it. And I know that it will be greatly appreciated because I've already had people come up to me and tell me so. So thanks again. I know that was another good one that I just felt good about. But now this Cardenas today and the United Way, McCabe, and the weatherization. I mean, this is what your new board intends to do: take care of the people of this valley and then the ratepayers of the IID. I can't overstate it, can't overemphasize it. This is my mission, and from talking to my fellow board members, it's their mission also. So I know there's some things that people want to see done immediately, and there are those things that just can't be done immediately, but we are working in that direction. Thank you.
Director Hanks.
Yeah, just real short. I want to thank our staff for their generosity on their contributions to the United Way. I can understand the gentleman's sentiments about walking on air. That is really going beyond the call of duty, and I appreciate it from our staff. I also want to give a little plug to my fellow board members. I appreciate the zeal with which they're pursuing their commitments, and also the urgency with which they're proceeding, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Director Benson.
I just want to say thanks to staff for their support of the United Way. I sit on the Boys and Girls Club board, and we are an indirect receiver of some of those funds, and the kids of the Imperial Valley really appreciate it. Also, I want to say thanks to the board and to staff working with us. It's been a quick month or month and a half or however long it's been since we started, but we are working with the farm community on the water side. On the power side, we're looking at a lot of different options, and I think we're cleaning up a lot of issues that have been, I don't know if they were just political hot buttons or what, but local entity and other things that we're trying to move forward and get cleaned up. So IID is trying to move forward. in a positive fashion, and I hope the community supports everything we do. And if you don't, you have my phone number. So thank you.
And Director Galindo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank Campesinos Unidos for their loyalty to the population of the Valley for so many years, and would like to continue to support your endeavors with regards to the low-income, all the services that you give to the low-income people. I would also like to thank unconditionally the United Way for the help and how you've summoned the help from the employees. I sit on the board of the Cancer Resource Center of the Desert, and it is one of the most benevolent organizations that anyone is going to come across. So for your help towards that organization, thank you unconditionally. And lastly, for those of you that are both from the power and the water side, please know that we are working arduously to bring about the many promises and changes that we talked about during our campaign. As you know, it isn't easy, but it is doable, and doable it's going to be. So I am available also at any time. I do quite a bit of outreach with the community, regardless of where the community is and the constituency. But please know that I am here to serve, and that I am here to support my fellow board members, and things are going to be better. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we've got a fair-sized agenda today, so we'll get with it. Before that, I'd also like to congratulate staff on your participation in works with United Way and the dollars that are raised there, and the increase of efforts in dollars over the years of all your efforts. This past week, Friday and Monday, was a celebration for Martin Luther King Jr. Directors Benson and Hanks participated in that celebration at the old Eucalyptus, along with I, and Director Kuhn participated yesterday, at the courthouse steps. You learn things at those events, and I didn't learn that Director Kuhn was the 2004 recipient of the Martin Luther King Award here in Imperial Valley from that organization. So I'd like to congratulate him on that from 2004, and also thank him for his efforts on the board and bringing forward items such as rolling back our reconnection fees from $400 to $25 to $50, depending on how the situation arises. And it was great to be able to follow through on that with a 4-0 vote in your absence, Director Kuhn. That's enough being said. We'll move on with the agenda as it's presented here. General Manager, Kevin, do you have any comments today? Mr. Kelly?
No, sir.
Legal comments, Mr. Taylor?
No comments, Mr. President.
Okay, we'll move into the consent item of our agenda. We have 3 items on consent. Item 1 is the minutes for January 8th, 2013. Item 2 is acknowledge the director's expenses reports. And item 3 is the 2012 fourth quarter end of the year salvage reports. Any comments or questions about those items, board?
Make a motion to approve.
A motion from Director Hanks to approve. Is there a second?
I second that.
A second from Director Benson. Call for the vote. Consent items pass 5-0. Now we'll move into the information section of our agenda. Item 4, which is found on page 28 of your agenda. This is a presentation by the Ferguson Group on the federal lobbying activities in 2012. Antonio.
Good afternoon, President Desert, members of the board. Antonio Ortega, IID Government Affairs. As you are already aware, the district is represented in Washington, D.C. by the Ferguson Group. And representing the Ferguson Group here today is Mark Limbaugh and Joe Rader, who flew down from D.C. To provide you with not only a brief summary of activities of importance to the district from 2012, but also to give you a glimpse of some of the issues that are coming in 2013, again, which are important to highlight before your board. So with that said, I will invite them. I will first invite Joe to come up here and provide you with this information. And if you have any questions for them as well, feel free to address them at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Ortega.
President Desert, members of the board. My name is Joe Rader. I'm with the Ferguson Group, which has had the privilege of representing the Imperial Irrigation District in Washington for more than 20 years. I'm accompanied today by Mark Limbaugh, one of our managing partners and a director of our firm's client services department. Between the two of us, we comprise IID's federal affairs team in Washington. We appreciate the opportunity to summarize our activities on behalf of the district in 2012. And as Antonio pointed out, we also like to give you a preview of some of the issues that the district will be interested in Washington in 2013. Many of these matters are laid out in detail in the memo that we provided. So we'll be brief here and just touch on the 2012 issues that we know are going to carry over into 2013, as well as some additional items we expect to come up. One of the 2012 issues that has already carried over, and an issue that IID has been actively involved in for the past few years in Washington, is the Hoover Power Allocation Act, passed by Congress in December of 2011. The act renews and amends contracts for the purchase of power from Hoover Dam. These contracts, which are currently 30-year contracts, are held mostly by public agencies in Southern California, Nevada, and Arizona. The Act renews them for 50 years with certain key modifications, one of them being it provides an opportunity for non-Hoover contractors, such as IID, to get a share of Hoover power. The Act achieves this by shaving 5% off the power allocations of the existing contractors to create a new pool that is specifically set aside for eligible agencies. And as a public irrigation district in the Boulder Canyon Project service area, IID is an eligible agency. This pool is set aside to allocate power to these new entities. IID has been interested in acquiring an allocation of Hoover power for some time. The district has been active in the past, beginning in 2009, working with the California congressional delegation and congressional committees to ensure that the legislation to extend these contracts and to direct the allocation of this new power pool, direct the Western Area Power Administration, which will allocate most of the power, that it be allocated in a manner that will provide a genuinely fair opportunity for irrigation districts to apply for and acquire an allocation of Hoover power. The Western began early in 2012 to put together criteria for allocating this new pool of power, which is known as Schedule D. We contacted Western on behalf of the district, made sure they understood of the district's continuing interest in acquiring a share of Hoover power. We have been monitoring the process pretty closely to give the district some advance notice on some of the benchmarks, timetables for participating in that process, opportunities to meet with Western, and to review and comment on the draft criteria. The draft criteria comment period closed the week before last. Western expects to have the final criteria published sometime this spring and hopes to begin taking applications for Hoover power sometime in the summer. It is obliged under the Act to complete the allocation of Schedule D power by December of 2014. One piece of legislation that the district specifically took a position on was a bill by Congressman Jeff Flake of Arizona. In 2012, the board sent a letter of support to Mr. Flake for his legislation, H.R. 5381, also known as the CLEAR Act. It would require EPA to develop a process in cooperation with the states and with input from local agencies that would allow for air quality data collected during what's called exceptional events, meaning storms, to be excluded from compliance for air quality standards. Right now, there is a process for doing that, but it's very clumsy, and EPA is not particularly sensitive to areas, particularly rural areas, where this kind of exceptional event thing is fairly common. Mr. Flake's legislation was introduced relatively late in the congressional session, so it did not get a hearing. However, the previous year, in 2011, legislation very similar to it, again by Mr. Flake, was added as an amendment to House legislation having to do with farm dust. The House passed that bill with a strong majority. Mr. Flake, as you may know, has since been reelected, but this time to the Senate. He has not reintroduced his CLEAR Act, but given the interest in this legislation in the House and in rural areas in the West in particular, we expect to see it reintroduced sometime this year, possibly for action next year. Although Mr. Flake's standalone legislation did not receive a hearing last year, the House Energy and Commerce Committee conducted a forum on cooperation among federal agencies, particularly EPA, local agencies and state governments on implementation of Clean Air Act regulations. The Imperial County air quality officials were invited to that forum and outlined for the committee the exceptional events issue, particularly as they relate to the Imperial Valley. Also, at the request of staff, we monitored pretty closely various pieces of legislation intended to make it easier for development of renewable energy on federal lands, particularly lands managed by the Bureau of Land Management. The House Resources Committee reported, meaning approved, a number of bills that would streamline regulatory review, environmental assessment, and permitting for mostly for geothermal, wind, and solar assessment projects where developers go out and try and figure out if this is a good place to develop it. And in addition, provided criteria so that the Department of the Interior would have to grant, if projects met the criteria, grant exceptions to some of the environmental review, and provided timetables for the department's approval of permits. Again, all intended to speed the development of renewable energy on Bureau of Land Management lands. Those bills did not advance in the House past the committee, but the House Resources Committee has already made it its top priority for 2013 and 2014 is to speed development, facilitate development of energy, both renewable and oil energy on federal land. So we very much expect to see those pieces of legislation in one form or another come back fairly soon in 2013. As you know, the district is one of several California public agencies with a ownership interest in the San Juan Generating Station, a coal-fired plant in New Mexico. The plant has been, like all coal-fired plants in the United States, has been the subject of numerous regulatory actions under the Clean Air Act. For coal-fired plants in the West, one of the things that has the greatest impact is the Clean Air Act's requirements to reduce regional haze, which affects visibility at national parks and wilderness areas. Over the past year, EPA is under a court order to review a number of state plans to reduce regional haze from coal-fired plants in the individual states. The state of New Mexico in 2011 provided a regional haze reduction plan for San Juan that would cost about $80 million. That cost would be spread among the several California agencies that own parts of the plan, as well as the primary owners in New Mexico. EPA rejected that proposal and instead imposed a plan that would cost $800 to $900 million. And again, California and agencies and the other owners would have to share that cost. Despite costing 10 times more than the New Mexico plan, the EPA plan was shown to have would have improved visibility to the extent that it could not be detected by the human eye. During 2012, working with the Southern California Public Power Authority, of which IID is a member, and the MSR Public Power Authority, which includes some public agencies in the Central Valley, worked with a congressional delegation in California as well as New Mexico. The congressional committees participated in testifying before the House Commerce Committee, and as a result of highlighting particularly the impacts that EPA's plan would have on ordinary ratepayers, particularly in rural areas like the Imperial Valley, EPA in September agreed to stay the implementation of its plan so that it could work out perhaps a less expensive alternative with New Mexico and the owners. Those discussions have been underway ever since. We understand that an agreement has been reached and possibly will be announced later this week. The agreement calls for the closure of 2 of the 4 units at the plant and the installation of emissions control at the remaining 2 units that were in the state plan and are far less expensive than what the federal EPA had proposed. If the agreement is signed as expected later this week, it's an agreement in principle. It will be finalized and eventually put into a formal New Mexico state plan that will be approved by EPA over the next few months. Meanwhile, and separately, IID and the other owners of the plant will have to work out among themselves sharing of power as a result of the closure of the 2 units, and as well as sharing of the costs, which I don't have those numbers yet, on the installation of the cheaper emissions controls at the 2 remaining units. One of the energy issues that I think is of importance to IID that is now in the national picture here are the tax credits for renewable energy development. As everybody probably is sick to death of hearing about the fiscal cliff, but at the end of the year, that deal that they took care of at least part of those problems included an extension of tax credits for renewable energy like wind, geothermal, and solar, very high priorities for those industries and for communities where there is a large potential for renewable development. The existing tax breaks were extended for a year, but they included a very important change in how they are applied. Projects previously, to claim a tax credit, you had to have a project that was up and running. Now you can claim a tax credit as long as you have a project under major construction before the end of 2013. Over the next several months, Congress and the administration are going to be embroiled in long-term deficit reduction, tax reform, debt ceiling arguments, and we believe one of the things will come out of that is probably broad reformulation of the tax code, the renewable energy tax credits, perhaps, as well as some of the oil industry tax credits will certainly be part of that debate. Folks we know in the industry and on the Hill are telling us that this year-to-year extension of these credits is becoming difficult because of the uncertainty, and our anticipation is that these things will be extended more long-term, but probably with some sort of phase-out over the next several years. 2 other issues, again, national issues that may affect the district. One is cybersecurity. One of the few things Republicans and Democrats in Washington agree on is that cybersecurity is a national security issue. There's a great deal of concern about cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, including electric utilities, domestic and irrigation water supply. What the parties can agree on is how to go about ensuring nationwide standards for critical utilities to comply with to ensure the safety of their computer systems. The Democrats and the administration would prefer that Washington set the standards. Republicans in the industry would prefer that industry set the standards. They came close to an agreement at the end of 2012. 2012, but it didn't quite make it. This is definitely an issue that will come back in 2013, and will probably at some point have a direct impact on utilities like IID, probably in the form of standards for assuring the safety and security of operating systems. And finally, the Obama administration in the last year proposed some changes to the regional power marketing administrations, including the Western Area Power Administration, which IID is familiar with, that the changes are intended to facilitate the integration of renewable energy nationwide. But there is a great deal of concern on Capitol Hill, and it's a very strong bipartisan concern, and among public and privately owned utilities, that these changes will increase costs for all utilities, particularly in the public sector, and may disrupt the balancing authorities that exist, particularly in California. And we are watching that pretty closely. The House has already held 2 hearings on that issue and has already pledged to hold additional hearings in the coming year. Now I'd like to ask my partner Mark to talk a bit about some of the water issues.
Well, thank you for having us today. And again, I work with Joe on the Imperial Irrigation District account. I wanted to go over a few Clean Water Act issues that we've been following for the board that you would be interested in. The first one being the guidance that was released this past year from EPA over waters of the United States and what constitutes a jurisdictional wetland. And a lot of this work was done in the context of the Supreme Court rulings, Rapanos and Swank, which basically were a little muddled in terms of what really is a waters of the United States or a navigable water that is jurisdictional under the Act. The guidance that ended up currently at OMB, Office of Management Budget for Review, is right now would essentially expand that jurisdiction to isolated wetlands, swales, and basically even gullies where you have intermittent water that could run. That could impact Imperial's ability to maintain rights of way in their electricity system, the transmission system. The one thing that we have consistently fought for and have assurances from EPA at this point that it will maintain is the exemptions for O&M and construction on irrigation ditches and laterals, which are exempt under the Clean Water Act and basically have their own guidance that came out in 2007 that basically set forth how that exemption would be used. So currently we see this guidance possibly one of 2 things happening. If they held on to the guidance, which that's essentially what they've done for about a year at the Office of Management Budget and looking at reviewing the costs and the intricacies of the policy decisions that will be basically given out to the bureaucrats out in the field, they would probably look at that as being, and Congress has consistently said this, that this is a expansion of the Clean Water Act through and not through rulemaking, but through guidance. And so what they would probably do is go to a formal rulemaking, which has a specific public participation process that they would take, testimony. They would take more thorough review of the costs and associated benefits and detriments to entities like IID. So, we think that they'll probably go to a rulemaking sometime this year. They've already listed it. EPA has already listed it as a priority for them to do that. Whether they release the guidance or not, it's still up in the air in terms of whether they go forward with the guidance. So stay tuned for that one. That'll be coming up this next year. The other issue that we're following is the sorry, I got the Clean Water Act issues regarding pesticides. There was a court case that basically had the judge ruled that EPA has to give out Clean Water Act permits to be able to use pesticides over waters of the United States. EPA went back and created a national permit, general permit, for those states that are not currently regulating its permitting, and obviously California does regulate its own Clean Water Act permitting, that would require a Clean Water Act permit for any applications of approved pesticides, EPA-approved pesticides over the waters of the United States. This is above and beyond what the current requirements are under FIFRA, which is the Federal Insecticide, Rodenticide, and Fungicide Act. And Congress has passed, in fact, the House passed H.R. 872 this year that would basically take away the requirements under the Clean Water Act for a permit for pesticides to be applied over water, and rely on the FIFRA or the label that the pesticide is approved for use, and rely on those to basically generally regulate the use of those pesticides. So that did not move forward in the Senate. However, there was a vote in the Senate Agricultural Committee on H.R. 872 that passed the House, and it was a due pass and wanted it to move to the floor. But Senator Boxer, being chairman of the Environment Public Works Committee, and Senator Cardin, who's the chairman of their subcommittee over water and environment, basically both blocked that bill from coming to the floor because they felt like their committee had jurisdiction, not the Ag Committee. So there's still going to be a lot of interest in that issue related to the combination of pesticides and the Clean Water Act as we move forward. One other thing that is not in your update, because it just came out, is a rulemaking from the Food and Drug Administration, and this is looking at regulations, future regulations over water quality standards for water that is used in irrigation for agricultural use. This is something that the United Fresh Produce Association and other produce and fresh fruit and vegetable associations have been monitoring. It does require inspection of facilities on an annual basis. It will require testing of water for agricultural use to assure that no pathogens, bacterial and other, are transmitted from the ag water supply to fresh fruits and vegetables that are consumed generally raw. Anything that is processed would be exempted from this requirement. So that's certainly something that, because that rulemaking is out now for public comment, it's something that we would recommend the district look into, possibly in conjunction with some of the fresh produce associations that are out there. Let's see. The final thing that I have is the levee safety issue. In the last Senate, last Congress, Barbara Boxer, the chairman of the committee, had circulated a new Water Resources Development Act, which was a WRDA Act. Didn't ever get introduced, but this act included a provision to create a levee safety program at the Corps. Basically, what it would do as written, and this basically came down from a committee, that National Levee Safety Committee, that reviewed what was on the books and what kinds of standards that are out there, and made recommendations to the Congress with legislative language. And what this language would do would basically say that any canal that's higher than 3 feet, that affects more than 1,000 acres, and that affects more than 50 people, would be considered a levee and would be subject to levee standards, not necessarily canal safety standards. And we all in this room know that canals are not levees, and certainly levees are not canals. And so we've been working on this on behalf of the district. We were able to get the Senate Energy and Water Appropriations Subcommittee to put language in their report language in the FY12 bill that basically said, look, these canals are not levees. They need to be exempt from levee safety standards. And when the language came out in the Boxer version of the Word bill this last Congress, it basically thought they had exempted it, but they said only if the canal systems are under the watchful eye of a federal agency that basically can assert that these canals are safe and that they meet or exceed levee safety standards. Well, obviously that's not going to work for us. So we've worked with the committee staff, and we're awaiting. Obviously, word is going to be coming up in this next Congress, and we're awaiting hopefully changes to that provision that will allow for canal safety standards to be met both at the federal and state level. So that would cover both federal projects and state or private projects that would be covered under state laws. So we're working to try to get the Corps completely out of how you maintain your canals in the district. I'd like to now move towards what's going on now in the Congress, and I'll start with kind of the financial and fiscal issues. I'll go to Joe to finish up with the legislative issues that we see coming. Currently, we thought we got over the fiscal cliff, but we really have 3 more cliffs to jump over here. The first one being the debt limit. Essentially, what Treasury has said is that the federal government will run out of borrowing authority to be able to pay their bills between mid-February and the 1st of March. We just heard today that the House will possibly vote tomorrow on a provision that will extend that debt limit for about 4 months until May 19th. There are some interesting provisions in that, however. I mean, first of all, it doesn't set a limit. It just says whatever you need, go ahead and borrow it. We'll give you authority to borrow up to whatever you need during that time period. But the kicker is the Congress must pass a budget by April 15th under this proposal. A budget has not been passed for the last 4 years in the Senate. So what they're doing is forcing the hand of the Congress, and specifically the Senate, to pass a budget that would deal with the fiscal issues of the nation. If they don't pass the budget by April 15th, lawmakers would have their pay withheld until such time as a budget is passed. And if it doesn't pass at all, they will have their pay withheld until next January. So it's kind of an interesting twist on this. I'm not sure the Senate's going to go along with it, and they've already called it playing games. But, we think that at least it shows that, there may be an option here to not have this big fight over the debt limit, allow the government to continue to pay bills, and move on to the next fight, which is the automatic cut that are set to hit in March 1st, that have been basically extended from the fiscal cliff talks in December. This means, for example, for the Bureau of Reclamation, the Bureau would lose about $84 million off of their entire budget. Now, that would not be necessarily across the board on Bureau programs, because they would have discretion to move that around to, say, cut grant programs, cut other things, then keep their operations going so they're not subject to the cuts. But it's significant, and Congress is going to have to do something by March 1st. And then, of course, we have the problem of a continuing resolution that currently is funding the government during fiscal year 2013, which we're in, and that continuing resolution expires on the 27th of March. So as you can see, February and March are going to be pretty active when it comes to the fiscal issues that we're dealing with. One other thing that we see, and I'll turn over to Joe to finish up, is an interest in the Congress on water infrastructure and water infrastructure financing. There's been bills both on the House and Senate side. And the Senate side was introduced by Senator Merkley of Oregon. And the House side, Representative Gibbs has floated a bill, has not introduced it yet, for the creation of a program called WIFIA, or Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovations Act. What that would do would create a program in the EPA, which this is essentially a start, but it could be expanded to other things, like the Corps. Create a program in EPA that would model after the TIFIA program, the Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovations Act, which currently provides funding at a pretty good rate, 2.8%. Over a 40-year payback period. So it's it could be a very good place to go get money for water infrastructure projects down the road if it is ever enacted. And what it does is use loan guarantees, lines of credit, and finances a portion of projects to entice other financing to come into play. One of the things that we see coming up with the tax reform effort is a move to either limit or get rid of the exemption for municipal bond tax interest. So in other words, they would tax either part or all of interest on a municipal bond. And obviously that pretty much takes all the fun out of the municipal bond market. So, and basically it would go away, that something else would have to take its place. Certainly we would want to fight for those municipal bonds, because that's a major point of financing for public power, public districts, water districts such as IID, but also, if they just take it away and don't replace it with something else, and what is going to take its place, it's again uncertainty that we have to deal with there. So those are some of the issues on the finance side. So Joe, you want to hit on a couple legislative issues, and then we'll close.
Well, it's certainly a lot of stuff to sling out there. Aside from the fiscal issues, which are going to consume Congress for at least for the next 3 months, following that, we expect as I said, a long-term debate on the reform of the tax code. Congress also has on the agenda, doesn't mean it has on the list of things it will absolutely do, but certainly on the agenda is a farm bill, immigration reform, now some gun control issues. Meanwhile, the president and his agencies are continuing to move forward on regulations, some of which may have direct impacts on utilities, both publicly and privately owned. Just want to close with our recommendation that as a public agency, IID is uniquely suited to be a voice on some of these issues, talk about how those decisions back there have real impacts on real people in communities like the Imperial Valley. And we urge you to remain engaged and to take every opportunity to make sure folks in Washington know how their decisions affect the people that you're responsible to. Thank you for your time, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Mr. Benson?
Sure. Thank you for coming. Let me turn this on. Just a couple. I wasn't here during the 319 deliberations, but I know that that's continuing, and Director Hanks and I are planning a trip back east in February. So just ask that you stay connected with General Manager's office in that trip, and look forward to meeting with you guys back there. But Boxer is the chairwoman of the Environmental Committee, or what is it?
He is the chair of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, which has jurisdiction over most of the environmental laws, as well as the Corps of Engineers Civil Works program.
Is that the Bureau also, or is that a...
No, the Bureau is under the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee.
Okay.
Excuse me, Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee,
okay.
Which has jurisdiction over natural resources, public lands, hydroelectricity.
Okay. And then it was interesting that Salazar came and visited and then quickly announced that he was departing office. And I was just wondering, for the public's viewpoint, I assume the commitment's still there from the federal level, but how do we re-engage the new interior person when they do get put in? They go through the process, but then do they plan another visit, or do we go back there and re-engage them?
Well, it's one of the things that engagement, particularly with the Interior Department, we think it should be at the top of the district's federal affairs activities. As you know, we've been working on bringing the Commissioner of Reclamation out for a visit, and that looks like it's on track for February. Talk about 319 and a number of other issues. here at IID. And as you mentioned, we're working on the following up the Secretary's invitation for IID and other members of the Salton Sea Authority to come back and talk with his folks about Salton Sea issues. I think during that Salton Sea appearance with Senator Boxer, Secretary Salazar pointed out that his Assistant Secretary for Water and Science, Ann Castle, is going to be in charge of Salton Sea issues. She is not leaving and will be there. I honestly don't know how long it will take to get a new Secretary of Interior. Secretary of Interior is in charge of offshore public lands where there's a lot of energy development, onshore lands where there's a lot of energy development, both of which a lot of people think should have a lot more energy development. So he's very involved in highly controversial issues. I would expect that the President's nominee, he or she, will have to go through the normal long process, probably possibly a fight in the Senate, so it could be months. In the meantime, the district needs to be engaged with folks like Assistant Secretary Castle, who will be there and will continue. And I can't stress enough to keep engaged with Senator Boxer, who has taken on a personal interest in the Salton Sea, is personally responsible for expanding the authority of the Corps of Engineers to be involved in Salton Sea issues, as well as your two new House members who have said that Salton Sea is one of their top priorities.
Okay, thanks.
One other thing real quick, the Secretary, even though he leaves a void, there is a Deputy Secretary, David Hayes, who will be acting Secretary, and so those levels will continue at Interior. But Joe's right. I believe the Assistant Secretary Castle has been put in charge of the Salton Sea issues that Secretary Salazar was working on, and certainly that's who we would want to engage at this point.
But I assume with the President continuing, there's some continuity there and kind of the message coming out of Interior too.
I don't, unless the new Secretary has a different vision, which it's all it could be possible. The continuity is there right now because those people are all political appointees of the President, and so they're going to be going along with what they've started. They'll try to finish that.
Okay, and I don't know if there's other comments. I just had one quick one, but you didn't mention Joint Strike Fighter anywhere on here, and we made an investment locally in an effort to try to bring the Joint Strike Fighter here to the Valley. It's a big economic boon for the Imperial Valley if that does happen. And I don't know if you hear any rumblings, if you guys have ever paid attention to the defense issues. They're not really water and power related, but they would be a big customer to the IID.
That has not been in our portfolio. We haven't had that direction from the district. Certainly that's something that we can work on for the district if we have that specific direction.
Okay, thanks.
Joe?
Yes, sir.
This 319 to me is kind of personal. It was my idea. I have had a home in the Mexicali Valley for about 37 years and hunted and fished extensively down there. And when that earthquake hit in 2010, I saw the devastation firsthand. And so I came back and I pitched this water going to the Sea of Cortez being held in the dam, and Mike Abadi took it back to Washington, D.C. and pitched it, and the president of Mexico was going to be back there about that time, so they were very receptive to doing something good for Mexico. And so to me, it's very personal. I mean, again, it was my idea, and I don't want to be oversimplistic, people. But when I first asked Director Abadi, to do this, it was a warm, fuzzy thing where I felt we could do some good things for some people that were truly, truly impacted down there, and that was the Mexican farmers down there, because they could not get water through that conveyance system. And so it was warm and fuzzy. It was my little gremlin, and I've said it before, somebody fed that thing chicken after 11 o'clock. It grew teeth. And now we have nothing to do with it. And yet the concept, the idea came from here. I'd really like to get to be part of that, whatever it takes.
Well, one of the things,
And I don't mean me personally, I mean IID.
and it's those types of there's things there, and as you know, IID is rich in resources and rich in rich neighbors who want those resources, and whenever possible, sometimes not to be too blunt, some of those other interests, like it when IID is not participating, and it requires sharp elbows, frankly. And one of the things that we have been working on, and I think is a focus of bringing Mr. Connor, Commissioner of Reclamation, to the Valley, following up on Secretary Salazar's invitation to Washington, is to make sure that IID is always in the forefront of those discussions in the future. I think, frankly, the department would have wanted IID to be more involved in 319 and was not, and understand that it's always better to have IID in the room. So that is one of our missions here, is to make sure that the district doesn't get left out of those conversations in the future.
Director Hanks, you have some questions?
Yeah, on the 319, I think part of our concern here was the fact that in the discussions on shortage, the implementation of that shortage criteria with Mexico, our priority is very guarded by the IID. And we just didn't want to get just thrown into that mix in a shortage situation. We've given at the store already. And so we just didn't want to get brushed in and say, okay, we want everybody to agree to this, and not knowing full well what we were agreeing to, because we really didn't have a place at the table. You talked about 3 cliffs in Washington. Well, we're going to bring back the 4th one. It's called the QSA cliff, and it has to do with the Salton Sea. And so we're really going to press that issue. Hopefully, on Thursday in our meeting with the Salton Sea Authority, a couple of us sat on that board, we'll try to kick off some information to staff in Washington that could be prepared to carry that on up to Senator Boxer and also to Secretary Salazar. And we'll make sure that you guys stay in the loop on those provisions. Just one suggestion. On the Food and Drug Administration marks that you were talking about, that could possibly have a big impact on part of our conservation efforts, particularly with pump backs. It would virtually eliminate the ability to use pump back with some of our vegetables, I'm sure, with that type of arrangement. And just one suggestion on the federal budget and ability to pass it, talk about holding their salaries. I don't think that'll even work. Why don't you just force them all to enroll in Obamacare coverage? Maybe that'll get them there.
Unfortunately, I didn't represent that we could do anything about all that. We just
Mr. Rader and Limbaugh, so you are aware that we have 2 directors coming back to Washington, D.C. in February?
Yes, sir. We are working on that scheduling now. Talked with Energy and Water staff earlier this morning, doing some planning for that.
That's great. For the rest of the audience, that'll be Director Hanks and Director Benson that'll be traveling back to Washington, D.C. So anything you can make their trips more successful and to punctuate our needs and concerns. And it truly is unfortunate we didn't utilize your services on that minute order 319 better than we did. So more looking optimistic to the future and having better successes for the IID in Washington, D.C., especially on the lower Colorado River.
That's always our mission.
Yeah.
And it's not cold in February, right?
Well, it was a nice warm winter until we came out here, and I heard it was 19 degrees this morning, so we're going to stay a while.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Any questions or comments from the audience? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Next up, we have item 5 on information, page 40 of your agenda. This is local entity organizational structure. Director Kuhn, you have some input here or comments on this?
Well, yeah. I truly would like to see this thing. What I would like to, each director name someone from the community as the local entity, and I don't think it needs to be up here with us because it became extremely political and it was used as a political club, and it's too easy for that to be taken advantage of. And it, how's this? No one need tell me it wasn't, for I was the recipient of it, and it need not happen again. And the possibility of it happening again shouldn't be. So I realized the first time we did it, I sat on it, it was way too many people. Then they adjusted it down, it still was too many people and quite ineffective. I'm suggesting a 5-member board, one from each of us. Let them hear this, keep it out of the political arena, keep it neutral, and then I do find everything good with having 2 board members to oversee that, and I'm more than willing to be one of them. But I just don't think that we should be in charge of that because of what happened. And I would ask that, and I realize it's information, but I would ask if we could get this on the action agenda that we do just that. That is my desire.
I need more information from you, Director Kuhn. Are you talking about going back to square one?
No, sir.
Are you talking about non-competitive side versus the competitive side, or
both of them? Both of them will be heard by the 5 people that we name, and then they would come to us with their.
Well, I wish I could support you on it, but I can't.
Okay.
When I came on the board, I think it had been 2.5 years, and there had been no action taken on the dispersal of the funds that were set aside. And we were facing litigation issues with San Diego, so we moved quickly and took it to deal with the impacts within the field that were followed. Those that had records that they did work in the field were impacted, and that accounted for 2/3 of the local entity funds, and 1/3 was originally geared for farm workers that was been displaced, and actually I don't believe we had any numbers come forward on that. So we moved to the non-competitive concept, and there's still some controversy over that side, well, actually both sides, but we continue to make progress in adapting our rules and regulations. We still have some areas of concern that we need to deal with. We had 2 directors sitting on the competitive side, non-competitive side, to review the applications and kind of be the watchdog on some of those forms. Plus, we also called for some audits of some of them. On the non-competitive side, I think there's still the issue of the readers being out of town readers, even though they may be independent readers. It appears to many here locally that they're more interested in the format and the ability to grant right, and not necessarily on the services that it provides to the locals that have been impacted. So that's a concern, and I would support something there to maybe reconsider the type of readers.
Well, I can only tell you that you just about made my case for me, because when I went through this thing, my farm worker providers on the west side and a bunch of them on the south side, they got clobbered in this process. I mean, clobbered. And I don't know what happened here, but I'm not finding fault. I see what happened, and my guys got hammered. So
we need to.
I'm only suggesting to strengthen it. I'm not trying to weaken this thing in any way, shape, or form. I'm just trying to make it fair. And then the end result is going to be brought to us for ratification, and so we have the last say. But I just think a 5-member neutral board or committee could get that done for us. I really do. And I believe it would strengthen the process rather than weaken it, and I would not suggest anything that would weaken it. So my desire is just to get the politics out of the damn thing. And trust me, I was one of those recipients of that stayed off compensation package. I got to wait a long time.
Well, anytime that this process, the creation of it was due to fallowing, and there's been efforts by some of us on this board to get out of fallowing as soon as possible to get out of this, or to modify the way that we fallow so that these people that is impacted could possibly walk away from all of this. They don't like it anymore, participate in this than anyone else. It creates contention amongst the ag service people, between the ag service people and their growers. And I've been a big advocate of a set-aside program. So it's open to all growers to set aside a portion so that the people that provide the service, they may be only getting 90% of the work, but that sure beats losing 100% of the work and getting reimbursed on 16%. That's about what it equates to.
So far, you've not said anything I disagree with. I just wanted.
And the worst part about it, out in the public viewpoint, they get chastised like they're getting some type of a handout. And in fact,
I was a recipient of that too.
They're trying to hang on to their business to 2017 without going bankrupt, and so that they can stay in business.
Okay, and I want to make it perfectly clear, I did not apply for any local entity funds this last go-around because I thought it would be used politically, and even though I didn't, it was used politically. So, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Anyway, I've said what I'd like to see. I think it would strengthen the process, and just is what it is.
Well, the item's on here for information, for discussion from the board and also the public. I have some concerns. We're addressing the local entity awards on our first action item today, action item 16, page 76 of the agenda. And we're dealing with the RFP process and awards for years 2008 to 9, 2009 to 10, and 2010 to 11. And I hear Director Hank's concerns somewhat of the committee structure got kind of behind, and that's why that's not the whole reason why we're behind in awarding this, but it's a significant portion of it. So the process can always be made better, that's for sure. And we'll have further discussion on this under item 16. And directors, any other comments or questions? Audience? So we'll have further discussion offline, Director Kuhn, and see if this item comes back for action item or not.
I would appreciate that.
Okay, next item 6, page 41 of the agenda. This is discussion on the effectiveness of automated gates at IID facilities. Mr. Kelly and Mr. Kuhn.
Yes, this item is at the request of Director Kuhn. It was to have been taken up on January 8th, and Director Kuhn was unable to make the open part of that meeting, so it's on today.
Dr. Kuhn?
Well, it's been brought to my attention numerous times that we have these automated gates, which we did not have when I was here before, so they're new to me too. And from farming concerns to the people who have to make them work, and all I'm hearing is they don't work. I mean, they work, but they don't work correctly. And they're causing a lot of damage out there. And they're causing a lot of grief out there. up to and including opening by themselves and letting water go through, that our sand arrows have no place to go with it. And so if that's the case, I think it was Warren Buffett said, if you're in a hole, if you find yourself in a hole, Will Rogers said it, if you find yourself in a hole, quit digging. And if we've invested money in these things and they don't work, and again, this is not just IID people telling me, this is farmers who have to live with it. A case in point, I won't mention his name, I don't want to publicly embarrass the man, but he had one that served his ground. And he hated it so much, and it caused him so many problems, that he finally got a hold of a director, and that director had it removed. And I saw him at his yard, and he said, "Thank God they got rid of that damn gate." And I said, "Well, you do know they just took that gate and gave it to somebody else, made somebody else's problem." He goes, "That's what the sand arrow said." He said, "But I don't care. The damn thing's not my problem anymore." So if that's the good they're doing, they're not doing any good. And yes, we've invested in them. But damn, if it's not working correctly and it can't be fixed, and I've been told that the technology for them is proprietary, and so they can't. They're incompatible with things that might make them work. And if that's the case, we just need to quit spending money on them, call it what it is, a mistake, and replace them with something that works, or put the other structures back in, because apparently they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're causing a lot of grief, and they're costing a lot of money. My concern.
Director Kuhn, I can support you on this one.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Silva, do you have any we have heard those complaints over the years. And I was even asked whether or not, this signaled some move toward automation generally. The water delivery system covers way too much geography that you could ever hope to fully automate. You're always going to have people to do that job. I guess the tension comes in with is there a way to strike some balance that makes sense and that actually works? So
yes, if I can add to that, the gates, Bruce, that you're talking about were installed within the system in the checks, and they were a different type of gate, a slide gate versus the oversight gates, and they were not reacting fast enough to really do what it was intended to do. So those really are not. They're not a good. There was a mistake made, I guess you could say. There was not a good application of those gates at those sites. But on other sites, for instance, at the headings of laterals where we need to automate, that probably is a good use for those gates. And some of those were also not, like you said, they were not not only not reacting fast enough, but they weren't, they were not programmed well. They have since gone back and redone the programming, and we seem to have very few problems nowadays. This is within the last 18 months or so. When I got here a year ago, they were going through a lot of those changes. So again, I think if we choose where we put those gates in, I think they can be of value, and we need to make sure that we're not putting them somewhere where they're just not made to work. Well, we can give you a report on the history that we've had in the last 12 months or so to see where we're at now.
Jesse, I don't mean to be rude in any way, shape, or form, and I respect you, and I always have. But the information I'm bringing you is ongoing, and I mean it's going on today, up to and including where when they go down, the silt and sand builds up, so they can't go all the way down. And it's causing a problem. Just what we've done, we took a 100-year-old system that worked, and in a perfect world, you'd have one guy sitting in a room with a computer and he could do all this. That would be so wonderful. but this is not a perfect world. This is Imperial Valley. The wind blows, sand gets in those things. I mean, they silt up. They don't work. And what we've done is we've taken we've taken people with eyes who are physically out there, and we've replaced them with a gate that just works on an impulse, an electric impulse, and it doesn't have eyes. And we took eyes off of that, and we had a 100-year-old system that wasn't broke, and we tried to fix it. I mean, this is my opinion, but the rest of the board they weigh in on this too. But I've been told they open up by themselves, and if they're doing that, then I guess it's like if you give a guy guard duty. If he's asleep, he's not doing you any damn good. And if these things don't work, they're not doing you any good. And in fact, they're doing you harm. And that's what I've been told by farmers and employees alike. So when you get that many people, the end user and the people that have to make them work, and you're constantly being told I can't say they don't work, that they don't work properly, then we've got a problem. So I wanted to bring it to the board's attention. I believe, personally, it's time to do something with them.
But if I can bring back a report to you and we see if there is a change or not, because there are still problems going on, but a lot of those problems have been resolved, excuse me, by redoing the software. But there's no doubt that anytime you have a gate, a mechanical machine out there, it's going to, once in a while, it is going to fail. There's no question about that.
Hey, Jesse, I just have a question. In your evaluation, did you interview the Zanjeros and the farmers on those runs, or is it just the operation of the gate? Is it working?
Yeah, in other words, we have the records, and like Bruce says, there was quite a few spots where they just didn't. It's not that the gates didn't work; they just didn't work for the situation where we put them in. In other words, they didn't really belong there, and those are the ones that were pulled out. There was more than one pulled out, and Bruce, we do have them sitting over there.
Not what I was told.
at one of the shops over there, and one of them I think was replaced somewhere else. Yeah, but I think what I looked at is the frequency of malfunctions, and we can bring back a report to you. And the guys do say, once in a while they do get one that doesn't work.
And what's the group that's handling that? Is that the system conservation?
No, it's our operations out of water control office.
Okay.
We have a group that takes care of that. But again, I can bring you that report. We can look at it to show you what's been happening over time. Again, the best use for those gates is on the headings, not in the checks where we've had them in some places. But it's when we've used them a lot is in the main canals where you have 3 gates, for instance, and you automate one of them. Those do seem to work pretty well. But not the ones that have a single gate, because those are the ones that really, if they fail, don't work.
And again, I've been told that the ones in the main canals are the ones that are opening up on their own. I mean, not being told to, right? And so it's created a problem, and,
yes,
and it's ongoing. But
yes, it has.
I will allow you the time you need. I just thought
I've also heard some concerns of those and sat through some workshops with IID and the stakeholders. So please bring the report forward, Jesse, and we'll move on and look at it.
Okay.
Board members, any other comments? Al Kalin?
Al Kalin, Westmoreland. I live by one of these automated systems, and I've watched it over the years as the districts tried to get it to operate correctly. I talked to one of the farmers today before I came to the meeting and asked him if he'd had any problems. And he said, well, it's running a little smoother now. But the canal ran over 2 weeks ago and flooded out 1.5 acres of our land. So I've got to believe they aren't working like they should. I mean, before they were installed, I don't believe this is in the Vale. I don't believe the Vale ran over that often. I farmed down on the end of it, and I never saw it run over until they started putting these gates in. And every time they run over, then you have to wonder how many times were they not delivering any water at all. And so you have pumps going off because they run out of water. siphons that, set in the field that go off because the ditch runs out of water. On the other hand, from what I understand, you've had automated gates on the West Side Main in the North End Division for 20 years. They work great. I don't know why the district's going with what is perceived as the Cadillac of all gates, and it's not working, why they're continuing with it, when the one they used 20 years ago worked just fine, from what I understand. Simple parts that you can go to the store and buy to make it work. It's not some fancy type of gate, so I don't know.
I just want you people to know I have not talked to Al Galen on this, so I guess I'll take that as they're not working properly.
Well, I think they work.
But not properly.
Yeah. And I wonder, do we need to continue spending that much money on the fanciest gate that appears to be out there when the one you had for 20 years worked fine? And I think it was replaced with one of the new ones, if I'm correct. I don't know. From what I understood, all happened was a motor burned out after 20 years. And instead of replacing the motor, they replaced the whole gate, and it could have easily been repaired. And I understand the SCADA system work with that old automated gate a lot better than the new one. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Any other further comments from the audience? Okay, we'll move on to item 7, Water Department General Matters, page 42 of your agenda.
Okay.
Jesse Silva.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, board members. Most of our water department issues are being addressed in agenda today, but just a couple of things. We are meeting with some farmers that have submitted proposals for on-farm conservation, and I personally have gotten some calls, and so I'm going out there and talking to them about what they're proposing for on-farm conservation. So that does seem to be generating some interest. Again, most of our items are following in the rest of the agenda. So that's all I have.
Question, Jesse, and I have a question related to the committee for Chuck Dumars. He's starting that committee meeting Wednesday, is that correct?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, Wednesday, yeah.
Yes.
And is that an open meeting, or is it a?
It's an open. It's a public meeting. Yes. It's been agendized and it's been posted at the.
And then what groups are being represented on that? Because I had some questions from the public as far as.
It's on this agenda.
It's on the agenda.
Oh, it is?
It's
Okay,
coming
I'm
up.
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Item 8, update on the cost of water department outside counsel, page 43 of your agenda. Joanna Smith presenting. Yeah.
Remind me.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. President, board members. I was requested to provide an update on the 2012 Water Department outside counsel costs. Just to give you an idea of what's budgeted and what we were looking at the beginning of 2012, the overall budget expenditures for both water and energy are showed up here, and outside counsel budgeted expenditures for the water department and the energy department are also shown up here. As you can see, outside counsel is budgeted at less than 1% of the overall budget. With regard to the water department, because that's what I'll be focusing in on for you this afternoon, again, the water department budgeted expenditures are shown up here, and out of that, the outside council budgeted expenditures are shown up here, and those come in at less than 2% of the water department budget. Some things to note for getting into the table that covers the outside counsel and the costs. The list of attorneys comes from pages D13 and D42 of the 2012-2013 budget plan. So the list just follows basically the budgeted details into the 2012 budget. Another thing to note is that the budget figures don't include reimbursement through insurance or other third-party sources. So when we budget an amount, we can't really anticipate whether or not there will be reimbursement until a situation arises. So our budget doesn't take into consideration reimbursement. Also, the firms and amounts and budgets are only estimates. What we try to do is, based off of the previous year, somewhat gauge what attorneys and outside counsel we'd be using, and gauge approximately what services we would need from that outside counsel. The issue with that is that we don't know what lawsuits will arise, what issues will arise, what new issues, new regulatory requirements, for instance, or new agreements, new policies, that sort of thing will arise throughout the year. So we can only estimate based on the previous year and try to hit around what it looks like the trend is. Also, the budget figures that are shown in here just come out of the budget. They do not include any budget adjustments that were approved by the board throughout 2012. Another thing to note is that the outside counsel budget is distributed between the water department and the energy department. And so for some of these attorneys and the law firms, they do work for both the water department and the energy department. And it's difficult without going through finance and doing the breakdown, which is several steps that you have to go through to break out what's paid by water and what's paid by energy at the end of the day. What I've provided to you is where there's an overlap between the attorney or the outside or the law firm. I've provided the budget amount that comes from both the water department budget and the energy department budget. And then the amount that's paid isn't split, so it covers the total. So you get the total budgeted amount and the total paid amount. And then a final thing is that we don't yet have the final 2012 numbers. That's because December bills are still coming in. Outside counsel bills on a monthly basis. So once the month is over, sometime in the following month, and we don't set a deadline for when the bill has to be provided. Simply, until they provide it, they don't get paid. So there's not a deadline that they must submit their bills, but they'll submit their bills in the following month, and then it goes through an approval process and then gets to finance for being paid. So we won't have final 2012 numbers until February. So the next three and the final three slides provide a chart and a breakdown of what has been identified as the outside counsel that does only water department issues or some water department issues. And we could go line by line if you'd like. What I have here is in the first column you have the firm, the second column you have a brief, very brief description of the matters or the work that the law firm handles, the budgeted amount. If there's a reimbursement, that's also identified. And then the actual paid. And again, the actual paid is not yet final, but it's the numbers that we have that were updated as of Thursday at the end of the day. And we could go line item by line item if the board wants to do that, or if you have questions.
Joanna, I just want to clarify one thing on Alan Matkins. Mm-hmm. You actually add the reimbursed and the actual paid, correct? Because insurance pays a portion of that?
Correct. Insurance pays for 90% of QSA-related lawsuits, but Alan Matkins handles some cases that are not QSA-related, and they also are handling the petition with the State Water Resources Control Board, and they're handling just general legal advice on QSA implementation, Colorado River matters, and those sorts of things. And so those are not reimbursed. So it is, the amount reimbursed is what's reimbursed, and then the actual paid is, in addition to that, that's what actually is paid by IID.
Okay, so I just did quick math, but it's $3.5 million total to Allen Matkins.
Yes, that's correct.
For 2012.
Just for 1 year.
For 2012, for 13 cases, a petition before the State Water Resources Control Board, and general legal advice on water department matters. Yes.
Further questions from the board?
Joanne, do you have any idea what the impact has been on our insurance premiums directly accountable to the QSA cases?
I do not have that information.
Do you know how much our insurance premium is for this coverage?
I do not. We have discussed having a future item on that and having our insurance representative come and speak to you because we have several policies. So what's covered by the insurance company for the QSA litigation is called the public official liability policy. But we have several different policies that cover, and it's my understanding is it's more complicated than that, and it would really be more appropriate for an insurance representative to be able to answer all of your questions on that.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Director Galindo.
Thank you. In looking at all of the names of the firms, some of them have more than one name. But the ones that have one name, there are a couple of them. On the amount billed, is that amount for the services of one attorney, or does that include other attorneys that may be in the firm that we do not know about? Let me just give you an example. Under the law office of Steve Escalera, we have a budgeted of $65,000 and we've paid $30,000. Is that towards one attorney services, or do we know if there are more than one attorney delivering the services?
I happen to know the answer to that question, Director Galindo. That's a single attorney.
And so, say, for example, Bart's, is that also a single attorney?
Some of these are, when they look like it, most often they are a single attorney. Not all of them are. Also, when you have a single attorney, sometimes they're billing, but if they have their paralegal billing at a lower rate for, say, doing some filing work or discovery, they may also be covered under that. They're not an attorney, but they are providing legal services. Steve Escalera is a single person. John Carter is a single person. Bart's law firm, Linda Bart's primarily provides the services. She does have another attorney working with her, but she provides most of those services on her own to IID. Some of these we have a primary attorney that provides the service. They're the most knowledgeable and the most, they have the longest history and information on IID. So to a certain extent, rather than someone learning the history of IID or learning the history of that matter and reading up on it, the same attorney will handle matters that are similar. So a lot of these, that if it looks like a single attorney, it may be a single attorney, but it may also include their staff.
And on these charges, some of these amounts seem a little exorbitant for the amount of time that they cover for one person to actually be able to deliver the services, given the amount of time that we work. I'm also assuming that some of these firms have other clients, and so they are billing other clients, and so out of those 8 hours a day, how much of that is our time? My question is, do we have itemized invoices telling us what this amount that is being paid for exactly entails, whether it would be X number of hours at Y amount of dollars per hour per week, per month, and so on, so that I personally can justify these amounts? Do we have that?
We do have itemized billings. All of our outside counsel provides itemized billings. What they identify is the day, the attorneys, paralegals working on the matter, a description of the work that was performed, the hours or time of that work performed, and then the total amount for that time. We could provide that to the board. The bills are available. We don't provide those to the public because they do include attorney-client privilege and information. For instance, litigation, what's being researched, what's being drafted, what's being looked into for litigation, those sorts of things. But the bills are available to the board to come and view. We are talking on a monthly basis. We are talking hundreds of pages.
And I'm aware of the volume, Counsel. The thing is that on this amount, the actual amount paid, again, let's take any one of these on pages 5 or 6. This is the amount paid so far without having closed the books for the year 2012. Am I correct?
Correct. Okay. A lot of them are done. A lot of them are complete for the year 2012, but not all of them are.
Okay. So what in your estimation is, and this may not be a fair question, but see if you might be able to answer, what is the largest amount that we pay per hour for any given attorney? I was under the impression it was somewhere between $300 and $500, but according to the math I'm doing here, it seems like we pay much more per hour.
7 days. I don't know what the highest amount is. I do know that the more specialized the attorney is, generally the higher the billable rate is.
Okay.
So if they're in a very specialized, focused area and not a generalist, there's fewer that have that expertise, and so typically for attorneys the rate is higher based on that expertise.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions from the board? Comments from the audience?
Times 300, that's 624,000.
Thank you, Joanna.
That's what John Carter charges, I got.
Next on item 9 under information is page 44 of your packet. This is an update by Al Kalin on the Water Conservation Advisory Board issues discussed at its January 10th, 2013 meeting. Mr. Kalin.
Thank you. The Water Conservation Advisory Board met January 10th, this past month. We heard from the north and south end managers, had an update on what's going on there. Those are always very informative to us to hear what's going on in each of the areas, and we're able to ask questions, find out what canals are out, what canals are being repaired, and so it's a very helpful thing that we have each month there. This last month, Mike Pacheco talked about the canal lining on the Marigold and the Moorhead canals have been completed. Also, Mr. Silva noted that beginning February 4th, 2013, construction and maintenance crews will begin working 4 days, 10 hours a day, Monday through Thursday, instead of the current 90-80 schedule, what's called. And that's supposed to cut labor expense. And obviously, we're all in favor of cutting labor expense, so if that works, that's great. And we have the same service that we've had before. Of course, we asked the question, will somebody be on duty in case we need them when they're off? And yes, the answer was yes, there would be. We also had elections, it's just January, and according to our bylaws, we have to elect new chairmen and vice chairman during that time. I was elected the new chairman, and Larry Cox was nominated and approved as the new vice chairman. We also passed a motion to remove Section 2.6 of our WCAB bylaws. We received a letter from Ms. Rivera, the secretary of the board, requesting that we remove some of the language having to do with who can remain on the WCAB board during an election if they're running for office. So we no longer have that on our bylaws. It's been removed as requested. We had a presentation by Mr. Silva and Ms. Shields, and on the 2012 water records, and it appears that Ms. Shields will create a document to review the information from the past 2 or 3 years on the diversion that we requested. Mr. Silva suggested creating a group to review water use issues, such as the 12-hour run process. So I nominated a committee made up of 5 farmers. They're ones that we usually don't see in the meeting rooms here. They're ones that farm a lot of ground and have a lot of 12-hour runs. It's hopeful that this subcommittee can work to find a solution to the problems we're having with 12-hour runs and the wide fluctuations that happen, the excess water that may be spilled out of the laterals. I think a lot of it might have to do with communicating with the farmers better. You might even have to hold a hammer above their heads a little bit. I don't know. I see a lot of farmers that aren't abiding by the laws that you already have. So, if we just enforce the rules that the IID currently have, it might go a long way in helping this 12-hour run situation. However, there are problems that I foresee and hopefully we can find solutions to. And one of those is if when you finish, IID would like you to call 3 hours ahead of time to say I'm finished so they can cut out the water. The problem is the 12-hour runs have accounted for so much water now that even if you do cut it out, you may not have a place to put it. You don't have the necessary storage capacity. Or there may not be a sand harrow on duty during the time that it's cut out, early in the morning, for example. So we have to look at all those things, and I'm confident that we can come up with some solutions that will help save some water in the future. We also talked about the committee to work on overrun, underrun years, and it's going to be meeting tomorrow, as Mr. Silva said. The subcommittee on the 12-hour run will also be meeting tomorrow because we want to try to get that finished up as soon as possible. So they'll be meeting in the morning, and then the other committee will be meeting in the afternoon and start working on how we can perhaps stop the overruns that we've seen in the past year. A motion was made to form that subcommittee to deal with apportionment issues as well as the on-farm conservation program and what we call the ABC, which is the Body-Grundy concept fallowing program. The motion was seconded and approved. Mr. Fillmore said that applications had been received for approximately 18,000 acres for the 2013 on-farm conservation program, and he's finalizing the baselines for those programs. And Ms. Smith said that the final contracts are expected to for review within the next few weeks. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 14th. That's about all that I have. Any questions?
Can you share with us the makeup of the committee that they're talking about?
The farmers involved in the committee, and these are a combination of Water Conservation Advisory Board members, Farm Bureau members, and veg grower members, include Jimmy Abadi, Mike Abadi, Tom Brundy, Larry Gilbert, Larry Cox, Mark McBroom, and Don Emanuele. On the 12-hour run committee, that committee is made up of Don Emanuele, Shelby Crittenden, Steve Dahm, Britt Dollywall, and Bart Reese.
Could you go over the 12-hour committee one more time?
I'm sorry, what?
Could you restate the 12-hour committee one more time?
Sure. This is Don Emanuele, Shelby Crittenden, Steve Dahm, Britt Dollywall, Bart Reese.
Thank you, Al.
Now, I picked these people because they use the 12-hour runs a lot. They have a lot of pumps going, and that's where the 12-hour runs are used a lot for irrigation pumps. And by picking those that use that
Could be, I don't know.
option the most, hopefully we can get some answers. Any other questions?
Board, any other questions?
No.
Audience, any questions or comments? Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
Information item 10. Next is amendment number 8 to service agreement number 81-1026 with GEI Consultants related to the Integrated Regional Water Management Plan.
Good afternoon, President Desert and board members. As part of the Integrated Regional Water Management Plan, the California Department of Water Resources developed about 6 disadvantaged community outreach pilot project grants, and IID has been offered one of those in the amount of $153,000, and it would be administered by GEI, and that's the item that's before you. What this requires of the board action is approval of the resolution that would authorize the change in the service agreement to GEI to include this extra $153,000. And IVEDC will be working with another consultant to provide the program to the community. So this is an information item, and then at the next board meeting, we'll be asking you to take action to increase the amount of this service agreement by $153,000 of state money.
So this is all pass-through money that funds this activity?
Yes, it funds the administration of it and also the service itself.
And so in the previous budget last year was $153,000?
No, last year's budget. The budget breakdown here is, it started out, GEI was hired to do IID's integrated water resources management plan. The acronyms are very similar. And then when that plan was adopted by the board, which I believe was September 2009, the board direction, it may say in this board memo. Anyway, the board direction was to take that to the public, so we did the Integrated Regional Water Management Plan. We received $1 million grant to fund that. So the amount of money that you see on the services contract includes both the IID, IWRMP, and also the Integrated Regional Water Management Plan which received funding of $1 million from the state.
What are they going to do with the $1 million? Or was that already spent?
That's already spent. That's that integrated regional water management plan that
Okay,
was
right.
adopted.
So I guess what is the outreach to the community? What are they able to do with the
Tim is going
community?
to talk about that.
Okay.
So, Tim Kelly, Imperial Valley Economic Development Corporation. This portion of the item was actually supposed to be brought to the board last March and was delayed. I'd been working with the staff over the last couple of years. A lot of these grants are competitive grants, and what we found is that it's very difficult for communities to compete on a statewide basis. We just don't have the resources here locally to be able to do that. We've implemented a lot of things with IVDC. One is the asset map through the mega region, which will identify the assets of the region, and a lot of studies will be compiled in order to be more competitive for those grants. The portion that we're talking about here today would be economic impact analysis that shows the return on investment for these activities. So, for instance, if a city is implementing a program for water management or water conservation, it would show what the impact is, or economic impact, and the job creation or job retention aspects of that grant. And so IVDC has been doing these as a consultant basis for many companies coming into Imperial County, and so when they look at the economic impact analysis, we do those internally at our office. There is a cost involved in that. We pass that on. We were suited to be able to participate in this, and I think looking at how we could be more competitive, we realized that a lot of the cities don't have the capabilities of doing this, and we've been doing this over the last probably 5 years on a basis in which we provide either reports or we provide advice. This has also been used in a lot of our EB5 programs on being able to evaluate projects for international investment. So I had staff here earlier that actually do that work, Cynthia Mancha, Mike Paredes. We're called upon a lot of times by the IID to provide information. We do studies for them and provide data to help IID do some analysis, and this is just another program that we've been engaged in for the last few years. So I think it's something that will enhance the communities by able to be involved in these grant applications and be more competitive. So it's something that was identified by the consultants in which we felt that we'd be able to provide that information.
So are you working with GEI?
Yes, we have been, and as a matter of fact, as I mentioned, that this was supposed to come to the board last March, and so it was one of the components to an application that we've been involved in for quite a long time.
Okay.
Board members, any other comments, questions for Mr. Kelly?
If there's an overrun on this budget, it's not the responsibility of the IID, is it?
GEI has had overruns on the Integrated Regional Water Management Plan, and when we got to our service agreement limit, we stopped payment to them, and they completed the project. There will be no overrun on the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Comments or questions from the audience? Thank you, Anise.
Thank you.
Okay, moving into the energy section of our information item. Item 11, Information Energy Department General Managers, page 58. Mr. Stills and Mr. Escalera.
Yes, Mr. President. In 2009, the IID moved from a serial study for its interconnection projects to a clustering process. And then in July of 2011, we entered into an experimental generator interconnection agreement with 9 cluster participants. Those 9 projects proposed injection of 939 megawatts into IID's system. The experimental process allowed us, the generators, to fund only the development phase activities for network upgrades required to reliably interconnect to IID's system, rather than the entirety of the project, which was the way our OAT process was developed. And that development phase included activities such as preliminary engineering, preparation for EPC bid packages, right-of-way assessment. And we did this in order to give the developers cost certainty for moving forward. Well, we've now completed that bid process. We have hard dollar bids from EPC contractors, and we're prepared to tender those cost allocations to the remaining transitional cluster participants. But before we do, we want to come at the next board meeting in closed session and discuss that in depth with you and seek some direction on how to move forward with it. So, the next issue is that we will have a team going to Folsom tomorrow to meet with the Cal ISO. You've heard us talk about the affected system study and the standard operating procedure that we will need from Cal ISO, calling for them to curtail generation rather than us dispatching counterflow. We will have a lengthy discussion up there with their operational personnel and see if we can reach an agreement on that SOP and get them to sign off on it. And then while we're there, we'll be meeting with Tony Braun, and the public's facilitated by Tony Braun acting as the CMUA representative, have entered into a number of meetings to talk about the defense of the balancing authorities. So I will see tomorrow if we can get Tony Braun to set that meeting up, continue those discussions, to come out with a strategy for the publics to defend their balancing control areas.
Thank you, Carl. Board members, any comments or questions?
Carl, I just became aware that the tax credits were extended for the clean energy projects. And I was wondering if anyone's coming to the table or if you hear of anything starting rumblings of new projects that weren't on the...
We're getting a couple proposals in. We actually got some new interest when we presented our transmission plan. We're getting a couple proposals that are starting to talk about the tax credits and the grants that could be extended. As you heard the Ferguson group, there's some uncertainty into how those grants are going to play out over a long period of time. We've asked them to provide us something to see if there's a sunset date on these that we can rely on, so we know where that price certainty and how that works out in our contracts. But we've got a couple developers that are talking about that.
Okay. And then I know that when you had the stakeholders meeting, a lot of people were looking at affected system study, and there was projects on there that might not ever come to fruition. There were some wind projects. Is there a deadline when they have to go or cut bait?
Well, actually, we discussed that on today's governor's call, and we're going to try to work out a timeline with Cal ISO tomorrow to clean up their queue, and that's one of the steps in that process. We wanted some type of substantiated basis for projects that were going to move forward. Either they were going to move forward or they were going to move forward within the time that they said they were going to come online. So we've asked them to clean those queues up. We need to find out when they're going to have that done tomorrow, and then we'll set that timeline. We told them today we wanted that sooner rather than later, because if we couldn't get it in the near term, we were going to pick a date and go with it and just say this is our base case for moving forward.
Okay.
So I should have more information hopefully after tomorrow's meeting.
All right, and then the Renewable Energy Conference is coming forward, and I know IID's always been a big sponsor. I assume that's going to continue, and I welcome the community to come and visit the Renewable Energy Conference, but then also tour some of the solar facilities that are extending their way from the west to the east along the borders.
Yeah, IID will be involved in that. I think we all have speakers there, and I have talked to Tim, and I fully support that. Also, Tim just gave me our Team California meeting with the consultants in Monterey from February 20th and 21st. We'll have somebody at that meeting talking to the large developers or manufacturers that may be able to bring businesses to the area.
That's great. Thanks.
Thank you, Carl. Any other questions, board? Mr. Escalera?
Thank you, President Desert, members of the board. Just real briefly, if you recalled, the last year or so, we've had, particularly up in the Coachella area and county, an issue with what we refer to as illegal trailer parks. In other words, these were trailer parks that were way substandard. We would have multiple trailers attached to one single service and such. The district has been working with the several agencies in the Coachella County. We've established a committee which is referred to as a Housing Review Committee. It's chaired by Supervisor Domino of Riverside. I just wanted to make the board aware that we have a meeting on February the 4th to kind of go over some final steps on how the IED may assist some of these low-income rural areas. I mean, it's amazing what these people, you'll have 10, 15 trailers attached to one service that's designed for one trailer. In many of these areas, there's no sewer, no services at all. So at the request of the past board, we've allowed it $150,000 out of our low-income funds to aid, what we refer to as aid in construction for low income. And it's primarily geared to cover costs that these customers would incur to bring up their electrical connections up to service. In other words, basically to cover our costs that they would have to come up with. Again, we've been working with them. I think we finally have set up enough of an identified process. How are we able to distribute these funds so that they're equitably and they go straight to the most needy? Just to give you an idea of who's in this committee, we have HUD, which is the Housing Urban Development. We have the Office of Social Concern, Catholic Charities, the tribe up there towards Martinez is involved because many of the trailers are actually in their area. We have the Coachella Housing Authority. We have the Fair Housing Council. We have CRLA that's involved. And then, of course, we have the county. And particularly the city of Coachella has also taken a leadership role because what they have found is as they put certain parts of the county, they found out that they've annexed some of these very, very sad situations. So they've also taken the leadership. Again, we have a meeting on February the 4th. I just bring it up because I wanted to stress that this is another way that the district goes out and does try to help those that really need the most. And with that, that's all I have, President Desert.
Thank you, Mauro. Board, any questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question. Whose land are these trailers on? Are they on Native American land, since you mentioned the reservation?
Some of them are. Some of them are in the tribe areas. Some of them are private lands. It's a myriad of different type of situations, Director Galindo, and that's kind of what this committee was set up, is how do we fund all of these agencies so that we kind of all go in the same direction, because the way trailer homes are managed in the state, if you're a licensed trailer, you have to go through the state. If you're an illegal license, then the county takes over. If you're an Indian tribal land, there's a whole sets of new rules that we deal with. So to answer your question, it's both Indian land, some private land. What some of these customers are trying to do is they take it onto their own. We as an example, we're working with a group. It's actually a family. They had 5 different trailers, and they're all hooked up to one. Of course, the meter burnt. Our troubleshooter goes out, and then we get stuck in the middle because we can't really hook them back up because it's an illegal collection. We take a huge amount of liability. So under this program, what we're able to do is assist them in opening. What they're going to do now is they've been able to work with all of these other agencies. They're going to put 5 different trailers. They're going to be 5 different customers, and then we're going to help all 5 different ones in their own. So now they'll have their own piece of land with their own trailer and such. I know it's a long-winded answer to your question.
No, it's just that for some reason it seems to me like obviously all of this is a result of poverty.
Yes, it is.
And poverty we know.
Yes.
Where are the landlords, and are these these families and these people in the trailers are going to benefit by what you're going to do? But if they pack up and leave tomorrow, who actually really benefits? Them for having the safety while they live there, or is it ultimately going to be the slum landlord?
Well, one of the things that we had that very same, how do we get over that hurdle? Because that's one thing that we didn't want to do, is that we did not want to take funds to upgrade somebody's rental that lived in Huntington Beach and is a slumlord down here. The way that we structure at least our funds is that it is done. It has to be to the landowner. In other words, if you have to own that piece of property, or the agency, one of the agencies, they've created an agency that's going around and actually redeveloping these trailer parks, for lack of a better word, and they actually now become owners of each individual plot. So now what we do is
the agency becomes owner of
the customer does.
Okay.
They've developed an agency that helps them funnel all the different fundings that we have together, because ours is only $150,000.
So they facilitate ownership of the parcel or
exactly. So once we do that, then hopefully we try to cover as much as we can with the grant money, and if not, we have we also put out a loan, a no interest loan, and it's to you, and it's for however long you need it to get the infrastructure built. Okay. So that was one of the big questions the hurdles that we had to get rid of, is that we didn't want to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board? Audience today, any questions from the audience? Thank you, Mara. Okay, then moving to item 12, discuss results of request for proposals number 932 covering air conditioning maintenance program. This is on page 59 of your agenda. Sabrina Barber is presenting.
Good afternoon, President Desert, members of the board. I'm here to discuss the results of a solicitation for services related to the administration of our quality AC maintenance program. This program seeks to improve the efficiency of existing central air conditioners and heat pumps of qualifying customers by providing maintenance services, specifically our duct testing and sealing, as well as refrigerant charge and airflow adjustment. The district previously offered a similar program. However, it was suspended to allow time to address some concerns related to the program structure and our ability to verify the energy savings generated by the program. As a result, the program was revamped based on internal analysis, as well as feedback that we received from or during our program evaluation, measurement, and verification process. So a new improved version of the quality AC maintenance program is being presented and brought back as part of our 2013 energy efficiency public program portfolio. Benefits to the customer as a result of participating in this program are lower operating costs and a related electric bill, as a well-maintained HVAC system functions more efficiently while providing a greater level of comfort to the customer within the home. Meanwhile, the utility benefits from increased energy conservation and resource efficiency, as well as lowering peak demand, as it's estimated that approximately 9% of residential peak load is a direct result of air conditioning. The contract amount is approximately $1.7 million, and based on the evaluation criteria, Analysis Corporation provided the lowest bid proposal. We estimate that based on this budget, we expect that approximately 7,700 customers can receive services by participating in the program. The solicitation closed late third quarter with the evaluation completed in fourth quarter. The evaluation criteria consisted of the pricing components that you see here. The selected contractor is responsible for program marketing, recruitment of the actual participating contractors, training of those contractors. The program is open for any contractor that has a C20 license, as well as the EPA licensing that's required for the RCA portion of the program. We only received 2 proposals in response to the solicitation. This slide provides a side-by-side comparison of the pricing costs, or the costs that were used in the evaluation criteria, with the recommended contractor reflected here and identified as respondent number 1. As you can see, the total cost of the program from respondent 1 came in at $1.69 million, whereas respondent 2 came in at a little over $3.1 million.
These respondents, are they here in the Imperial or Coachella Valleys?
The respondent 1 was in the is in Imperial Valley, headquartered in Imperial Valley, with the respondent 2 being outside.
I'm just curious, but what does DTS and then RCA mean?
DTS is the duct test and seal.
Oh, okay.
We just abbreviated it
Okay.
to make it more concise.
Thanks.
Staff presented the results of the evaluation to the Oversight Committee in November and recommended the award to Analysis Corporation. As this is an information item only, staff will be recommending award of RFP 932 to Analysis Corporation. At this time, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to take those.
So they'll make recommendations for improvements, and then is there some sort of funding along with that, or?
Well, we've actually set aside funding from the Public Benefits Fund balance for this program, so it would be covered there. When I mentioned that there were recommended improvements to the program, that's already been completed. We completed that in towards the end of 2010, and then during 2011, during our EM&V that's required as of Assembly Bill 2021, that's where we received the additional recommendations for revamping the program.
And the previous consultant that did this, did they use up their total?
Yes, they did. In fact, there were a couple service agreement amendments to increase the budget.
And
It is
what-
a very successful program.
Okay, thanks.
The only concern that we had at that time was the ability to verify the savings, and that's the only reason why it was suspended.
Who are the principals of analysis?
Eric Taylor is the president, and their facility is located in Calexico.
Haven't seen that young man in a long time. Didn't he have a, what was it? What was his?
G Meter?
What?
G Meter, is that what? He's also related to.
No, not related. He had a company in Calexico. I mean, he had one that JET was his business, but he had another one that was something to do with
air conditioning analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah, he works. I think he's affiliated with Bobby Locke too.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, board. Any further questions for Sabrina? Audience today, any questions or comments? Yes, please come to the podium. Come to the podium, please.
Down 514 J Street, Raleigh. What's the eligibility criteria for these 700 people that would benefit for that?
This program is open to all residential and small commercial customers that have an IID contract account.
Business?
As long as you have a small commercial business account, yes.
Further comments, questions? Not seeing any. Thank you, Sabrina. Okay, this item 14 on information. This will be our last information item today, as item 15 was pulled. 13, excuse me. Item 13. Review results of request for proposal number 947 regarding residential weatherization services. Page 66 of the agenda. Sabrina.
Hi, again, I'm here to discuss the results of a solicitation, this time for services related to the 2013 Direct Install Residential Weatherization Program. This program was offered in 2012, and due to the success of the program as well as popularity with the customers, it is again being offered in 2013. The program seeks to improve energy efficiency of residential structures by providing weatherization services such as weather stripping, the installation of shade screens, and energy efficient lighting. This is open to both low-income customers as well as regular customers. For customers that are currently enrolled in our REAP program, there is no cost to the customer, whereas if they're non-REAP customers with an IID contract account, obviously, the weatherization services will be provided for $100. The benefits to the customer as a result of the program will be lower overall energy costs, as the measures will help to keep ambient air temperatures from entering the home, thus reducing the air conditioning and heating requirements. Similar to the quality AC maintenance program, the utility benefits from the increased energy conservation and resource efficiency, while again addressing the peak demand that is directly attributable to air conditioning load. Customers who participate in the program will receive up to $1,000 per home of installed energy efficiency measures. The contract amount is $1.6 million, and based on the evaluation criteria, Campesinos Unidos provided the lowest bid proposal. The program's estimated customer participation using this budget is estimated to be approximately 1,700 to 1,800 customers. The solicitation.
I have a question before you go. So the amount of the award is $1,600,000.
That's
Is that what the amount of the award would be? And would you repeat the number of customers to benefit from this?
We estimate that approximately 1,700 to 1,800 customers, residential customers.
Okay, that's
could participate.
$1,000 per customer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what do we do with the rest of the $1.6 million? Does that go to, how much of that goes to administrative costs, to marketing, and everything else that is related to the service but is not a service in and of itself?
Well, part of the actual proposal itself includes program marketing, the implementation of the measures, the data collection and verification, all these different components that are listed here. That's the estimate that we received from Campesinos Unidos in their proposal. There'd also be quality assurance and support and resolution services.
That doesn't answer my question, and perhaps I need to reword it. Of the $1,600,000, I know I see that. Your CUI is going to service approximately 1,800 customers.
And the reason for that is based on our experience on the weatherization program that we've offered before. The homes tend to range between $700 to $800. They usually don't qualify for the full $1,000. They usually don't need all those measures to be installed. So that's why you see the difference.
So there's not a cap at 1,700. They can continue to use up the money.
Right, if it allows for it. They can. We're just estimating that that's what we'll be able to
So
hit.
the next page, is that just a price per item?
This here, this is how many of the measures that we estimate to be installed.
Okay.
Each of the measures, as you can see here, the highest frequency installations will be in the energy efficient or the lighting measures, specifically replacement of existing lights with CFLs, and also with the installation of occupancy sensors, with the next being the installation of Energy Star ceiling fans. But these are other services that could be provided under the program. What will happen is the selected contractor will go out to the home, they'll perform an energy assessment of each individual residence, and then based on their findings, they have this recommended list of measures that they'll choose from to have installed.
And what is the criteria that's going to be used for qualifying the recipients?
Again, this is open to any residential customer with an IID contract account. And then the cost to participate will be based on whether they're currently enrolled in IID's REAP program or not.
Right, but how can we ensure that, with no pun intended, Mr. Lopez, that others beyond the family of the people that are constantly receiving services from CUI get the service? And the reason is because I know that that's a stigma you've had to deal with for years and years, that when these monies are awarded to your entity, everybody within your organization and related to it receives the service, and then there isn't anything left over. As a matter of fact, two meetings ago, we had a problem where someone came up and said nobody had the money. So my question is, in order to be equal to everyone, how are you going to reach everyone outside of the realm of CUI perimeters, for the lack of a better term?
I guess I'm not understanding the question. We'll provide these services to any interested customer. They can either contact us directly, or we'll have an 800 number set up for Campesinos to have the list. We'll verify
Effective when?
Once we get the notice to proceed. So we've got everything set up on our side ready to go, but we still have to make sure that we get the proper documentation into contracts, and we receive the notice to proceed from contracts.
And is there going to be formal advertisement, or is it going to be something that's going to come with a bill and maybe people will read it, maybe not?
We'll be doing some actual marketing, but we'll also have inserts into the mailer. We'll include an article in the circuit, things of that nature.
Okay.
And then, of course, the selected contractor will be providing marketing services as well.
Okay, thank you.
The solicitation, or actually we received 3 proposals in response to our solicitation, and this slide again provides side-by-side pricing with the recommended contractor listed here as respondent number 3. As you can see, Campesinos Unidos submitted the lowest cost proposal based on the evaluation criteria. And as you mentioned, there have been internal discussions related to concerns that resulted from prior experience, but however, CUI has been providing weatherization services specifically for SDG&E and Southern California Edison for a number of years. Plus, locally, the organization is now under new management from when we had been involved with them before, specifically under the new leadership of Executive Director Mr. Jose Lopez, who spoke earlier. And staff will be working very closely with CUI during the program rollout as well as the program implementation.
I have a question that I assume they're respondent 3, and is that correct?
Yes.
But the contract's for 1.6 million?
Yeah, that's an error.
Okay.
Pretty big error, isn't it?
Yeah, to say the least. I apologize for that.
So it's 1.1, or should that be a 1.6?
I'll have to verify that information and get it back to you. I believe it's 1.6, but I'll
Okay.
have to verify.
So I was thinking they left a lot on the table there.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
My
And then
apologies. I'll bring that back.
Is there any guarantees that they're going to do this many units of each, or is it up to them when they look at
No, there's no guarantees because it's up to the actual assessment of the structure itself. So it depends on what the needs are. It could potentially exceed that and might come slightly under that.
Okay.
But even if the program, all customers max out at the 1 million, then we'd be about 1,600 customers.
So do they have a specific price for each of these, or can they set the price?
They do have prices that were submitted in their proposal.
Okay.
And we use that pricing structure as well as the quantities listed here to determine the total proposed project
Okay,
cost.
thanks.
As this is an information item only, we'll bring this back again for action at the next regularly scheduled board meeting.
One more question, Mr. President. What was the amount of the last RFP of this nature? Did this increase significantly in amount, or is it the same?
We actually, if I remember correctly, I'd have to look at the numbers, but I believe it was 1.9 million for last year, and then we also had a service agreement amendment to increase the funding for the program.
Thank you.
The only thing I'd say is, I know Campesitos Unidos has a broad reach, both here and in Coachella Valley. I'd just like to keep an eye on it. It's a one-year agreement. Is that right?
Yes, it is a one-year agreement. It's 20, just for the 2013
going forward to
program.
open it up to other contractors, I mean, if that's 1.6, they were pretty close, and I don't know if you could ever split it between two, or if there's a way to just extend it out to other groups. But I'd keep an eye on them and continue forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Sabrina, board? From the audience today? Any questions or comments from the audience?
Thank you for the presentation, and to the board for your confidence, and hopefully next time you approve it. Final approval. Gracias.
Thank you. Okay, our last information item today will be item 14, background on Western Farmlands Special Projects Grant Program, page 74 of the agenda. Veronica Zaragoza.
Back in 2004, the board adopted a resolution authorizing the purchase of Western Farmlands and recognized a need to mitigate the reduction in property taxes revenue to the county. In 2005, IID executed an agreement with Imperial County in order to make in lieu payments. In 2011, in conjunction with Imperial Office of Education, IID has developed a grant program to replace the in lieu payment currently received by school districts. Because IID is not bound by law to make payments, the district can offer the grant program to schools district to 50% fund rate will save $121,000 in 2013 to the Western Farmlands program. It is important to mention the IID continues to pay 100% of the contributions to the general fund, fire and safety, protection, and bond payments. Applications for the 2013 Western Farmlands Special Project Grant Program will be available to school districts on February 1st, 2013. A three-member panel, which include Carlos Villalon, Water Department Assistant Manager, Teresa Perez, Water Controller, and myself, Business Analyst, will be reviewing applications, and grants will be awarded at the last board meeting of April. Any questions?
Yeah, the grants will be based on the
Tax roll.
on the Western Farmland that's located inside that school district's boundary. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And there's a minimum floor for small school districts.
The minimum award will be $1,000.
Okay, so it's the same as we've had it in the past.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maximum award?
The maximum last year was about $46,000.
Which school got that?
Calipat.
Calipat.
Gee, I'm shocked.
You know, you have to realize this is based on the ground that's in Western Farm. You remove the tax base. It's the ground that's most often fallowed, and it's the schools in that area that are most impacted.
Yes.
It is no different than where it was before, with the exception that the district took back about half of the funds that were going to Sacramento and are now being kept locally.
Actually, I'm sorry.
When you did the QSA, you should have talked to a school superintendent on school financing.
I'm afraid he'd have his math wrong.
Actually, it's a very good program because the schools, they can have 50% plus they still entitled to 100% by the state.
Well, and just out of curiosity, then, if I may ask, what did Imperial get?
$1,700.
Well, we still have the in lieu payment 100% to the other entities.
No, I understand, but what did the Imperial?
Whatever they were eligible for.
But I don't know what it was.
Oh, I do not have that
automated
information.
gates.
Worked just not properly, huh?
I just have a question.
Come next week, you'll know.
Gloria, could you find out what Imperial got and let me know in the future, please? I mean, it doesn't have to be right away.
Will this be coming back at our next meeting for presentation? for awards?
No, they're going through the process.
At the last, actually,
April.
February 1st, the applications, they're going to go to the school districts. After that, we're going to get the applications back by March 8th. We're going to evaluate and reviewing the applications. There's 3 members, like as mentioned before. And the last board, in the last board meeting of April, we're going to award the checks.
Okay.
And you bring that back to the board, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I had a question. You say approximate savings of 121,000. How are we saving money? Or who's saving the money? I don't understand.
The Western Farms Land Program. If we would, this year.
Let me explain it to him.
Okay.
The school funding, schools have a guaranteed funding.
Right.
And whatever local taxes that are collected makes up amount X. To get to the full amount, the state makes up the difference. So the way this was arranged, the money that was going into the tax base was going 100% reimbursable to the state of California, doing nothing for Imperial County. Schools were getting the same amount that they were all along. So with the concept of grants, they still get their full funding, plus they get 50% of what we had, and IID kept the other 50%. So 100% of the money is staying local.
Imperial Unified School District got 21,500.
Oh, they said they got nothing.
Do you have the other distribution there? Well, there's
Alexico
Holtville and
had to get plenty.
Holtville got 10,000.
Yeah, but Calexico did well.
Calexico, 8,300.
What? Well,
there's not that much farmland. You have to understand. You have.
Wait a minute.
These properties are farmland.
They bought a bunch of Brockman property over there, though, and then we ended up buying it.
It's not in there anymore.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Okay.
Thank you, Gloria.
Any further questions from the audience, comments? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess, and we'll 5 to 10 minute recess.